Hello, Fleet, and welcome back to another episode of Captain's Academy with your instructor Chase. And today's episode is going to be a bit of a short one. I'm not feeling too good, to be honest. Got a bit of a sore throat, and I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to try to, cover a short but still pretty important topic. Now, today's topic is the issue of consumables, because now we have the regular free consumables as well as the premium consumables. And you shouldn't purchase all of them because I don't think all of them are as useful, but some of them I think are must purchases and you should get them. So I'm going to tell you sort of which ones to get. Now, before I get started, somebody's probably going to ask me, well, why would you purchase these consumables anyways if there's a free version that you can use? Well, let me explain it like this. Consumables, they do sort of small but very, very important work. Got that annoying fire? Well, don't you wish you could put it out that little bit faster if you're in a battleship? That little bit can save you a lot of HP. Not only that, but I think that having a fire get put out faster allows you to stay in the battle longer. The longer you stay in the battle, the more likely you are to do more and more damage, so on and so forth, and get great, better and better rewards for it. So one of the big things, which is when people look at a consumable go, but it's like 22,000 credits, it's really, really expensive. And I know, but factor in the fact that if you can do more damage and you can contribute more to your team, the rewards you get at the end of the battle greatly outweigh the little bit of credits you put into an essential consumable. So without much further hesitation, what I'm going to do is going to jump in there, give you each class of ship, as well a ranking as which of the consumables I think are absolutely necessary, which ones are optional, and which ones really you can just use the free ones. So let's get going. Let's start with the easiest one, which is carriers. Carriers only get one consumable, that being a damage control party. It's the one that helps you put out the fires and stuff like that. And I think as a carrier, this is something you absolutely have to get. That's just because the vulnerability of carriers to things that, like once you get set on fire, you can't do anything, which is very different for every other class of ship that, if they get set on fire, they can still fire their guns and still do damage. As a carrier, once you have a fire on your deck, you lose HP and you can't launch or recover any planes. So as a carrier, absolutely get the premium version of this consumable. It'll definitely do you good. And not only that, but as a carrier, if you don't get sunk, the credit cost of this consumable is negligible because you will gain so much credits for having contributed to the battle. Now, if only all ships were as easy to decide as carriers. So I guess the next one, that is probably the least complicated, would be destroyers. Now, my personal experience with destroyer consumables so far has been that the most useful one that I found has been the engine boost ability. I think it's the job of destroyers to use their speed to sort of zip around, and I think anything that can be used to help you zip around to certain places faster, I think that is of primary importance. Now, some people might say that smoke generator is pretty important, and well, I think smoke generator is one of those optional things. If you have, let's say, a premium account and you're making plenty of credits and you want a little bit more of an edge, then get a smoke generator consumable, the premium one, because it allows you to get smokes faster. But truthfully, I don't know, I just don't think it's that useful because the smokes nowadays are primarily used as sort of a defensive, either run away or cover your team kind of thing. And once you've used it, you don't really get one again for a few minutes anyways, so having a little bit faster and a little bit slower, I don't know, it's just a bit of an optional thing I think. The least useful one for destroyers is the damage control party, and that's because the premium one only reloads a little bit faster, which I don't think is a massive increase from the free version, so that's the one that really you can just pass on. So that's destroyers. A little bit more complex than carriers, but still relatively simple to decide which consumables are absolute must-gets and which ones you can pass on. Battleships get a little bit more complicated because they have an additional thing to decide once you get past tier 7, which is whether or not you want to trade in your spotting aircraft for a catapult fighter. So let me address this. The most important thing to get on a battleship is obviously the damage control party, and that's because that's the thing that is going to keep you alive in terms of fixing flooding or fires, and with the amount of fires especially going around these days, it's a really important consumable to spend a little bit of credits to get. In terms of optional ones that, let's say, once again, if you had a premium account and you make a little bit more credits and you want to get, you might want to consider getting Repair Party 2. And of course, once you get past tier 7, you might want to get Catapult Fighter. Some people might be wondering, well, why don't I get Spotting Aircraft? And that's because Spotting Aircraft, for me, when I think about them, it's kind of a very situational kind of thing. You use the Spotting Aircraft primarily for, let's say, either engaging stuff at super long range, which is not really effective anyways, or when I tend to use them is when somebody's trying to run away from me and I want to lob some extra hits as they're running away and maybe get myself the kill. The problem with Spotting Aircraft right now is that when you send it up in the air, the duration is relatively short, but the cooldown time is stupidly long. So, for me, in terms of order of importance, the Spotting Aircraft is really right down at the bottom. So, for me, the free version and the premium version kind of do the same thing. Catapult Fighter, once again, I put up in sort of in the optional you can get, because one, I think it's active for longer, its reload time is shorter, so that means you're gonna likely benefit from it more. And the other reason is that once you get above tier 7, carriers start to get way more powerful. So having a little bit of sort of your additional anti-aircraft defense that you can disrupt enemy attack waves, I think is a beneficial thing to have in a battleship. So catapult fighters are definitely placed in the, if you do have the extra credits to spare, you can get them. And finally, we get to the most complex ship in terms of consumables, and that is cruisers. So in terms of importance, the most important thing to get in any cruiser is the defensive AA fire consumable, and you want to get the premium version of this because you want to have a cooldown as quickly as possible so you can use it again. Defensive AA fire is super useful because it boosts the damage of your long-range AA gun by, from everything I've heard right now, 6 times. Which is, take whatever damage you're doing with your long-range AA guns and increase it by 6 for like 40 seconds. You're absolutely able to wreck airplanes with that. Now, if you're in a Japanese cruiser, you also want to get this ability, not because you can shoot down planes, but because you can disrupt enemy attack waves on your ships, or on yourself. So definitely, most important thing to get. The catapult fighter is kind of like the cruiser staple, and you can opt to get a premium version of this plane because they do get shot down, and you might want to get another one up faster. But it's an optional thing. You don't necessarily have to get it. They're useful, but not absolutely necessary, because even the stock one does fly around for quite a bit of time, and in terms of everything else, they're identical to my knowledge. Spotting aircraft, which is something you get at tier 10, I think again is one of those interesting things. You're going to trade away the catapult fighter, get a spotter plane, which once again, remember, long cooldown, doesn't stay up in the air for very long, but it does boost your range, which for tier 10 cruisers like the Zhao or the Des Moines can be a very interesting way to play, because all of a sudden you can reach pretty much near battleship range, and you can really reach out there and touch somebody. So it's a very interesting idea, and I think those two can be they're optional, but I think they can be actually quite useful. Now, the red ones here, you can get the premium version again, but at the same time, I don't know, I don't find them maybe as worth it as getting the premiums for the other ones, namely because as a cruiser, yes, you get set on fire, but typically speaking, the amount of damage you take from fire is significantly less than battleships, because your overall health pool is lower, so the amount of damage the percentage of damage you lose in terms of HP is not as high. So the damage control party, for example, is something that I think as a cruiser you're okay with the free one. The repair party is also the same thing. You're unlikely to use the repair parties in rapid succession. So once again, you can just stick with the free version, use it once and sort of use your speed to get out of battle, something that a battleship cannot do. That's why a repair party for battleship is more of the optional thing, and that's something that would actually be useful. And of course, finally, the hydroacoustic search is one of those things that you should never get, because you should never trade away the defensive AA fire for hydroacoustic search. And because I've just never found the hydroacoustic search to do anything really, except spotting destroyers a little bit further out when they're in smoke, and spotting torpedoes a tiny little bit earlier, but in both cases negligible gains. So that's something that I would just never get. Always go with the defensive AA fire. And I'll actually show you a real short video clip here as to just what defensive AA fire can do to planes. So take a look at this clip. So I'm just going to show you a clip in the Atlanta, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because there have been times where I've been in battle and I've seen people complain about the Atlanta's AA being weak. Well, here's my Atlanta with the defensive AA consumable, as well as my captain, spec'd with the advanced, the basic firing training, and of course the AA module. And just watch the number of planes that are about to fall out of the sky in the next little bit here. The reason why this barrage AA ability is so absolutely terrifying is that it, like I mentioned earlier, boosts your damage by something like 6-fold boost. This essentially means that the Atlanta, with the mods, the captain skills and everything, can do in excess of 300 damage per second out to a range of 7 kilometers. That is basically, if your planes were in the center and this Atlanta was still kind of off your screen, you'd already be losing planes to it. This consumable is what turns the Atlanta from a sort of an average ship into something absolutely ferocious when it comes to its anti-aircraft capabilities. Not only that, but once you activate this consumable, one other thing happens is that all the enemy attack planes have this panic reaction where they go from either a narrow spread or a small dive bombing dot to these huge circles and these huge spreads that they don't let them hit much. So that's something to keep in mind, that with this consumable, not only do you disrupt, but for certain ships like the Atlanta, you will absolutely devastate enemy attack squadrons. So hopefully this Captain's Academy has been helpful to all of you. I'm not feeling too great, so I'm gonna sign off. Hopefully this will allow you to spend those credits intelligently on consumables that will help, while saving you some credits as well from not having to buy things that aren't that useful. Okay, happy sailing everybody, have a great day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the high seas.